everyone, welcome all, and welcome back for another full series review of the British black comedy anthology show Inside Number 9. This time I'm going to sink my teeth into the fourth series of the show, breaking it down episode by episode, starting with Episode 1, Zanzibar. What if Pemberton and Shearsmith made an episode of Number 9 where the script is one long poem? Well, they did, and here it is. It's done in an almost theatre production style, with the fourth wall being broken by the characters narrating and explaining continuity throughout. The episode takes place in the Hotel Zanzibar, and our plot surrounds the guests on the 9th floor and their interactions together. It essentially plays out like a Shakespearean comedy of errors, but in a modern day London setting. Rory Kinnear plays a prince with Shearsmith as his bodyguard that plots to assassinate him and take the crown for himself. The prince fancies himself some off-the-menu items, so requests a prostitute for the evening, which we'll come back to later. Also on the 9th floor we have the great Bill Patterson and an old lady with memory loss, accompanied by her son, played by Pemberton. The lady disturbs Patterson, thinking he's her husband and that her son is a strange man. Another development is that a young couple arrive at the hotel, the man of which is identical to the prince. One of the hotel staff mentions the sexual prowess of her boyfriend, the bellboy, which catches the interest of the young woman, Amber, who wants to get another room, planning to get a bit of the old in-out, in-out. Patterson returns, Mr. Green's his character name, who reveals he wants to kill himself in the bath due to losing custody of his twin sons. I wonder who those twin sons may be. The bellboy Fred returns, as does the good Kinnear, who gets put into the Prince Kinnear's room as the Prince Kinnear has left to a different numbered room due to the superstition of the room number being 911. Can't blame him, to be honest. But that also means that good Kinnear is now in the room the prostitute has been ordered to. But good Kinnear has a plan of his own. He's ordered an apple tart to the room with a wedding ring inside to propose to Amber. The old lady goes door knocking again, now onto Prince Kinnear's door, who thinks she must be his prostitute. Amber and Prince Kinnear argue, with Amber thinking the prince is the good version. Can you tell this episode's threads interweave a lot? But actually everything ties together quite nicely here, with all the scenes taking place in the corridor itself rather than in any of those rooms. So it's really fun to track who is in what room and what has been ordered to those rooms at any given time. Also, it's really cool trying to track the wires crossing with the rooms. Every time a person changes rooms, the plot threads tangle in a completely new way and shift the character dynamics of the entire floor. So cool. Anyway, the prostitute arrives and the bodyguard tells her to slip a sedative into a glass of wine for the prince. But of course, it's not the prince, it's the good Kinnear in room 911 now. The hotel hypnotist now arrives, going into the room with Amber and the maid. The situation with good Kinnear and the prostitute naturally goes wrong, with the character misidentification coming into play. The speed of the ever-changing locations of the characters exponentially increases. The prostitute ends up with the couple's apple tart, Amber ends up with the forgetful lady's son, the hypnotist drinks the sedative spiked wine. Everything cranks up into full gear, with everyone as a pinball bouncing around the corridor, clashing into one another. We finally get the expected moment of the two Kinnears seeing each other, and Mr. Green reveals he very well may be their father. Could this be a happy ending? Nope, the assassination plot is still afoot, with a knife to Mr. Green's throat. The hypnotist recognizes him from his show that evening and manages to get him to hokey cokey away from Mr. Green. Everyone's saved, Amber and good Kinnear are back together, and all is well. Overall, Zanzibar is a really fun series opener. The format was highly enjoyable, and all the entwined relationships of the characters made for a thrilling watch. There's a bag full of funny moments here, and plenty of memorable scenes and characters. It's definitely one of the show's lighter episodes, with no bad murderous consequences coming at the end, just a lot of confused people. This one may well take a couple of watches to fully grasp, as all these relations can get complicated, but I feel like pacing wise and structure wise it does a good job of keeping itself relatively easy to follow in the moment. So it's a thumbs up from me and a great start to series 4. Episode 2, Bernie Clifton's dressing room. I've always loved Steve Pemberton as an actor, but this is the episode that solidified him a BAFTA for his performance, and it's one of Number 9's finest. The episode takes place in a hall with two very old friends coming face to face after a long time apart. Tommy and Len, formerly known as the double act Cheese and Crackers, have decided to reunite after 30 years. In the hall, they talk about their history together as a double act while practicing some of their old routines from back in the day. Their first sketch regarding an interview contains a lot of dated racist stereotypes, which Tommy questions, saying that in today's world, the routine wouldn't be able to fly without controversy. Tommy comes across as incredibly bitter about the past, while Len remains enthusiastic and passionate about their act. Tommy's got a new life and wants to get rid of the memories of cheese and crackers, having a corporate job and employing people to get rid of YouTube clips of their old content in order to maintain his business-like image. He openly admits to feeling embarrassed, which deeply saddens Len. All the while, Len never gives up the battle of trying to remind Tommy of all the fun they had together. But then Tommy brings up an incident involving real-life entertainer Bernie Clifton's dressing room that apparently Len owes him £25 for, which visibly makes Len awkward and go back into his shell a little. There's clearly something that happened there that impacted their relationship. The episode continuously drip feeds information to us about each person's private lives, as well as their dynamic and history as an act, while they keep on rehearsing. But all the while we get undercurrents of Len struggling with personal issues and alcoholism. Even still, Len can sense that Tommy had issues of his own, becoming more cold and serious over time, which ended up killing their spark. And Len's issues get worse, revealing that he's ended up homeless, sadly the fate of a lot of unsuccessful performance artists. Len wants to keep to the classics, while Tommy wants to update their material for a modern crowd. Both have their own issues while simultaneously clashing about what direction they want to go in, and this is what has buried a lot of double acts over the years. After performing their fantastic Brown Bottles act, which is a pleasure to watch, Tommy reveals the mystery behind Bernie Clifton's dressing room, as Len simply can't remember. The incident involved Len getting hammered from drinking actual beer in the Brown Bottles act, leaving the stage during the performance and passing out in the dressing room in a pool of vomit. The Brown Bottles act always involved Len necking 7 bottles of real beer, which fed his addiction to drinking and caused him to nearly die. And this is where Tommy's motives start to clarify. He loved performing but hated to see Len slowly intoxicating himself over the years, with his drunken antics souring his reputation and making them lose key opportunities to excel on popular variety TV shows. Tommy, teary-eyed, powers out the admission that he broke up Cheese and Crackers to save Len's life. And then the most explosive yet whimpering bombshell walks into the room as Len's daughter enters the hall and Len mysteriously disappears. The entire time, Tommy has been in the hall by himself, and he isn't there to bring back Cheese and Crackers, he's there to give a speech at Len's wake. This is a ton of bricks, and as a plot twist, doesn't force it in your face. It just removes one element to the room, Len's presence, and everything changes. Tommy admits to having unresolved business with Len and never truly got to say to him what he wanted while Len was alive, but then is handed an envelope by Len's daughter. Inside the envelope is a flyer for Cheese and Crackers and £25. This is a succinctly beautiful example of show not tell, and the second your brain connects the dots, your eyes can't help from watering. And now, time for one last performance. This absolutely wrecks me. It's the routine for tears of laughter, and the weight of the lyrics is so much heavier given the metaphorical boulder that has just planted itself on our emotional scale. The ghost of Len fades away at the end of the routine, while Tommy heads off to the service. This one is a gorgeous roller coaster that highlights the magnificence and art of the double act dynamic. Shea Smith and Pemberton themselves are one of the finest acting and writing duos in the world, but they also idolize partnerships from throughout history. The British simply love a double act. Morecambe and Wise, the two Ronnies, Dick and Dom, Ant and Dec. But the reality of the world is that every now and again you get a Hale and Pace, a double act that had a chance to be considered one of the greatest ever, but somehow never quite caught on and were a flash in the pan. And that's the history of Cheese and Crackers. They had something, but their personal problems echoed through their performances, and that's what led them into a graveyard of countless more failed variety performers. Bernie Clifton's dressing room not only acts as a love letter to classic comedy, it's also a love letter to the double act. In terms of a back and forth performance, it's my favourite pairing of characters Shea Smith and Pemberton have written and played, because there's a lot of history and truth in who Tommy and Len are. They're solidly tangible, and their misgivings and failures are sadly plausible. The episode is a time capsule for Steve and Reese as a pairing, and remains one of number 9's most melancholy tales. Show business is a tough business, with its skills having a far heavier pile of unsuccessful acts than successful ones. That's just the way it is, and Bernie Clifton's dressing room significantly highlights that with a aplomb. I adore this episode with all my creative heart. Episode 3, Once Removed. Right off the bat, I'm going to make the controversial comment that as a filmmaking structure, I'm personally not a fan of Memento. That will be sacrilege to some, admittedly, but it just wasn't for me. And since Once Removed is essentially number 9 doing Memento, it's unsurprising why I'm not all that fond of this one. If you like the structure of Memento, you should like this, but sadly it's this episode's detriment to me. By the way, if you don't understand what I mean by the Memento comment, essentially both that film and this episode are told backwards. We are given a scene from the end of the timeline of events, and as the episode progresses, we are shown progressively earlier events from the same timeline so you can identify the context of what you've already seen. Every single segment is a prequel to what you've already witnessed. And if you like that, cool. I just kind of don't. It's a yo-yo effect, really, because it's not even strictly seeing the story backwards. It's seeing something, pulling it back a bit, but then the story advances, pulling it back again and letting it move forwards a little bit further, and so on. It's constantly flexing forward and back. The story in question begins, or rather ends, with a delivery removal man coming round to an isolated house in order to remove some furniture, and the woman who answers the door is a bit on edge. Why? Well, that's what we learn as we progress, or rather regress, through the narrative. Shea Smith arrives as the husband of the edgy lady, and she tries to shimmy the removal man out. Something clearly isn't right. When Shea Smith's dad comes downstairs and vomits up dark liquid, the delivery driver rushes for a towel but discovers the dead body of Pemberton, then another dead body of a blonde woman wrapped up in a carpet. The edgy woman stabs Shea Smith in the neck with a screwdriver and then cut to black. Wanna know what the hell that was all about? Well, keep watching. The old man's vomiting caused by Shea Smith spiking a cuppa with rat poison. Edgy woman's still edgy due to being threatened by Shea Smith, who has a gun beneath his oven glove. There's your context for the first scene we saw. Now we go back again with Pemberton arriving at the house. We know he winds up dead, but here we see how. He's the property man selling the house, so here we learn it doesn't even belong to Shea Smith. Pemberton unveils the dead blonde woman before being killed, and then Shea Smith places the bodies as we saw them earlier. The old man upstairs isn't Shea Smith's father, as we thought earlier, another development which appears. Back in time again, when the blonde woman was alive, and we learn she's the daughter to the old man. So we know we're gonna see her die in this segment, which of course we do. And that's one thing with this kind of structure that I'm not a fan of. By having the ending at the start, you know everyone's fate, and your level of enjoyment will come from how interested you are in seeing the build up to those fates. It is pretty well done here though, regardless of me not being the biggest fan of it. As the story unravels, it adds layers, which is so difficult to achieve, but here Steve and Reese pull it off swimmingly. Fancy some more developments? Here we go. The edgy woman arrives, so let's find out what her case is. She's doing some sort of undercover dirty work by recording conversations and discovers that due to an affair, there's a whole assassination plot going on, with Shea Smith being the hitman. He arrives at the house and you know the rest from here. That's it. It is a good episode, but it doesn't ever really give you any surprises, and yet again, that's just because of how the structure works. It makes you go, now and again, when you notice how something you've seen was set up, but it simply can't blow your mind because of it moving backwards. It is a fine episode, and the right viewer will adore it and watch it time and time again. Subsequent watchers have made me enjoy it a bit more, but on the whole, it's not one I'll rush back to in a hurry. Solid enough for what it is. Episode 4. To have and to hold. The acts in this episode are structured into traditional wedding vows as we explore the life of a married couple, with Pemberton as the husband, Adrian, and Nicola Walker as the wife, Harry. They're having their vows renewed, but Adrian is very passive and ignorant about it, while Harry shows all the passion and interest. Adrian is a wedding photographer by trade, and Harry wants him to provide the same level of care and attention to their marriage. We learn that due to complications with Adrian, they're not able to have children, which is what is affecting them both emotionally. And on top of that, it's revealed that Harry had sexual contact with another man at one point, which adds even more fuel to the oncoming fire. Wanna see the matchstick? Adrian develops a photo of Harry meeting the other man again. He's been following her behind the scenes and tracking her phone calls. This makes things awkward and shows they're not on the best terms. The two perform some roleplay to try and spice up their sex life, but it's awkward and you can tell it's a last-ditch attempt to add some excitement to their relationship. It's a really sad scene. scene. They're clearly drifting apart, and Harry is trying everything to make it work. However, Adrian simply doesn't feel comfortable. Their marriage is on the rocks, and the issues are all very real. Adrian and Harry are written like a living, breathing couple that are so authentic in their execution. Shearsmith comes in with his new wife as they come round to the house to collect their wedding photos, but Adrian and Harry bicker in front of them, causing the true colours of their bond to spill out onto the carpet in front of them. At this point, where do you think the story can go from here? Absolutely nowhere near you think. Adrian goes into his development room in the basement, makes a pot noodle, and unveils a hidden soundproofed cupboard with someone chained up inside. Oh my days, this came out of nowhere, and the direction of the narrative does a sharp left turn like nobody's business. This is a sledgehammer of a moment that is right up there with the very best of number 9 twists. Harry has a sudden surprise for Adrian. She's booked them a week's holiday in Paris, and he bricks himself as whoever it is he's chained up will likely starve to death by the time he would theoretically return from Paris. So in order to prevent the trip from going ahead, Adrian throws himself down the stairs to injure himself so he can't go on holiday. But it goes a bit too far, and he winds up doing a lot more damage than intended. He dies from the accident, or so we are told by Harry. What happened to him really? There's a cleaner in the house, and that is who was chained up in the basement for 9 years. For revenge, Harry chains Adrian up in the same room to see how he likes it, till death do them part. Easily one of number 9's most underrated episodes, this. The driving force of the story is the fact it gives you a full-on crash bang wallop halfway through that changes the whole thing. It's superbly acted and written. To Have and to Hold is a cracker of a watch, and one that should definitely appear on more people's top episodes lists. It's certainly gained a lot more love from me since my initial watch. There's something so Hitchcock or Fincher about the whole thing that just works so nicely for a number 9 episode, and is a fine example of proving to never take a single episode of this show at face value. Episode 5. And the winner is? Our players in this episode combine into a committee judging a Best Actress category for an award ceremony. They have to assemble the nominees before deciding a winner. Involved in the committee are journalists, actors, directors, and even a member of the public, which allows for a clash of opinions when discussing the category. And for the most part, that's it. Just these people bickering amongst each other about their thoughts and feelings. Generic dim-witted views from the public member, grumpy opinions from the veteran actor. Everyone has an element of bias in their views, or they're not concrete or justified properly. These people can't really be bothered with what's going on, and it goes disastrously. People start taking personal potshots at each other for stuff that's not even related to the category. The arguments become useless because the voting comes down more to image and reputation than the actual performances given. The actress here hasn't even seen any of the films. It's actually the public member who drops the pin out the grenade when she says that surely it should be about performance rather than popularity before she leaves the room in an emotional state. Want to get to the twist here? This public member is one of the nominees in question that ends up being voted for to win. Therefore, she in a way rigged her own vote with her performance in the room among the voters having a sway on their decision. Yeah, this episode happened. Wasn't that great at all, and not an awful lot going on. It's 100% on the lower end of the number 9 scale for not being all that gripping. Not the funniest script, not the greatest twist, not the best performed, not the best characters. All the things that number 9 episodes are generally strong on. But here all the elements are a little too lukewarm. This one gets a sideways thumb from me. And the winner is certainly not this one. Episode 6. Tempting Fate. Ready for the traditional horror finale? Let's go. Steve and Reese here are a couple of forensic investigators joined by a third squad member named Maz. They're in an old man's flat who was found dead and are tasked with scouting out the place. There's some atmosphere involved with some standard haunting knocks and bangs and long sequences of silence and investigation. The squad learns that the old man had won the lottery before death, and they crack a safe to see if they can find any of the money. Instead, they find a videotape and a bag labelled "Danger, do not open." Wonder what they do. Inside the bag is a small statue of a hare, which is an Easter egg, hidden in every single episode of number 9 somewhere. But this is the first and only time it's been directly linked to the plot. When watching the videotape, which is the old man talking to the camera, it's explained that the hare statue is cursed by providing 3 wishes to its owner, and that the wishes don't end up exactly as you ask them. The man then hangs himself on camera, leaving the squad with a dilemma. Like the title suggests, they begin tempting fate. Some strange goings-on occur when a dead rat found in a cupboard and hung on a door handle in a carrier bag comes back to life again, which is a byproduct of Shearsmith making a wish accidentally. Maz wishes for a very specific £93,000, since it's not too much but enough to make a difference. It appears in the form of Monopoly money in a carrier bag, but that might not be the money she asked for. Perhaps the real money has been found by Pemberton in another room, and they argue about pocketing it. After squabbling over the third and final wish, Maz dies under Final Destination style means, leaving only Steve and Reese. Steve kills Reese, admitting he killed the old man in the video, before battering Reese over the head and goes to head off with the money. But then someone enters the flat. It's the old man. But how? He's dead. Reese shouts from the next room. He's used the final wish to cure Steve's son, who is disabled, a plot thread that has been mentioned in passing throughout. But at this perfect moment, Steve realizes that he accidentally severed a gas pipe while scuffling with Reese, and at the same time, the old man sticks the kettle on. Boom. And that's the series up in flames. It's a decent one this, but again, nothing overwhelming. Surprisingly, as such a huge horror fan, I overall find a lot of the horror-focused episodes of number 9 to be generally the weaker ones. It's super cool to have the hare statue have a proper outing as a device in this episode, rather than just being a part of the scenery, and the superstition behind the hare's significance in witchcraft is worked in quite nicely, but I wasn't all that engaged with the subplot of Steve's disabled son, as he wasn't the main character here. It was mainly Shearsmith and Maz. To be honest, I don't think Maz was all that necessary as a character anyway, other than having 3 wishes involved, so therefore there should be 3 characters. But equally, it could have worked a lot better with just the 2 characters, Steve and Reese, each using 1 wish each, meaning that it becomes a fight for who gets the final one. And I think that would have allowed those characters to gel a bit better. We learn they've known each other for 12 years, but it doesn't really feel like it an awful lot, as that element of the story isn't put to a forefront. A few more character moments between those two in place of Maz's parts would have strengthened this one more. As it is, it's probably one of my least favourite finales of number 9. But as a series as a whole, what do I think of series 4? Well, it certainly did have its ups and downs, and generally felt a bit lopsided to me. Bernie Clifton's dressing room is an all-time classic, and To Have and To Hold is an underrated classic. But for the rest of the series, I feel that the structures of Zanzibar and Once Removed were pretty good, though I wasn't overly blown away per se. Zanzibar was my preferred in those two. Then with And the Winner Is and Tempting Fate, it was the narrative that didn't fully engage me more than the concept of the episodes. Strongest for me, Bernie Clifton by a mile, weakest And the Winner Is by a mile. But what did you think of series 4? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll join you next time for my full breakdown of series 5. If you enjoyed this, please consider hitting the subscribe button to help the channel out, and I shall see you next time, Ghoul Gang, inside number 9.